This doesn't work. Let's see if I unplug this, what happens. All right, let's try this. There we go. All right, so use your journal, go to the next blank page in your journal and title it Events in Black History. You're going to take notes on this, of course, just like we've done before. This may or may not be an open note quiz. It definitely will be a quiz or actually a test, probably a test, probably not an open note quiz, but it's still important to have those notes because you'll be able to quickly refer to them when you make your little 3x5 card for a test, or it might be for an open note quiz. We'll figure that out when we get there. But anyway, events in Black history. First of all, since I'm going to be out quite a bit, Black History Month is extended into March. So I'm only going to be at school one day next week. That is Tuesday. Sad, boohoo, cry. I know I'm going to miss everybody and you guys are going to miss me. I know. That's okay, though. We'll get through this. We'll get through it together. And I'll be back the week after. I should be back the week after, but still, that's going to put us pretty far behind. So we're going to continue this into March up to spring break. We're going to slow things down a little bit, take some time, and really get into this stuff and just give people a little bit more time so that everything doesn't stack up on each other. Today, which is Friday if you're watching this at the right time, today is the end of the first mid-quarter, and there are already six assignments that are due that you need to have done in Canvas. So definitely check out those. Make sure you have all those done. And then we're on to this right here. So hopefully you titled your page, Events in Black History. As you're taking notes, go on to the next page when you are ready. Pause the video when you need to pause. And we'll go ahead and continue with this. And I'll stop every now and then tell you about other things that come up that you need to know. So a timeline of repression and triumphs of African Americans. Repression means keeping people down. Triumphs means, well, successes that they've had. So that's what this is going to focus on. This presentation is broken into 6 parts. Please write this down, and after you're done writing it down, put a box around it. Put a box around these 6 parts. Also, feel free to use different colors. Remember, you're doing this at your own speed, so you can pause, you can do different colors, anything like that. Make it colorful, make it interesting to you so that when you look at it again, that it's easy to find information. So we have 6 parts here in the history of Black America, and that is pre-United States slavery. That's when they become important in America. Now, African culture and African people have a extremely colorful history and very rich culture indeed over in Africa and other places. But since this is U.S. history, we are focusing on the United States and, well, actually North America and the United States. So, number 1, pre-United States history. All these will be in order. Number 2, slavery in the United States. So, how Black people were treated in the United States as slaves and also as free people of the North and free people of the South. Number 3, Reconstruction. Reconstruction, that follows the era right after the Civil War. Reconstruction is where the entire class will end in May. We're going to get right up to Civil War, and we'll stop there. And then in 11th grade, they'll pick up again with Reconstruction, a little bit of Civil War and Reconstruction. But since Reconstruction is extremely important to Black history, we're going to do a really brief run through of it here. Segregation. Segregation, pretty much separate but equal laws, and it was a sort of like a legalized racism and how it impacted America. Recent history, what happened after segregation and when I was young, and then finally in your lifetime. So what has happened so far in your lifetime? All right, let's go on to the next slide. Put a box around it, make it pretty, whatever. Slavery, pre-U.S. So this is in chronological order, so we're going to start a long time ago. which is 1472. In 1472, Portugal is that little tiny country right at the right on the edge of Spain, but back then it was an extremely powerful country, probably even more powerful than Spain. But in 1472, Portugal begins the slave trade. And what it does is it goes down to Africa. It gets tribes from there, and what they would do is they go down there and they would trade different foods or different goods for the African prisoners, criminals, and malcontents. Malcontents is just a fancy word for people that cause problems, people that are constantly getting in trouble, but not necessarily criminals, jokers, just people that can just be sort of difficult. And back then, Africa and Africans and just places, actually a lot of the world, didn't have actual prisons or jails or places to house these people. And if you were just constantly in trouble, there was no real justice system involved, except for kicking them out, telling them they can never come back, saying you're booted out of here and you're not allowed to be back. That was really the only real punishment, which dates all the way back to the ancient Greeks. But they would trade to get prisoners, criminals, and malcontents, as well as ivory and gold, and they would trade them for food or art or spices or even things like bells, just different things that they would trade with. In 1619, there's a big gap here, but that's because we're fast forwarding to actual English-speaking colonists. 1619. The first slaves, they arrive in Virginia at Jamestown, and they mark the very first slaves in the colony. Now, remember, Virginia is a southern colony, even though it seems kind of in the middle. It is a southern colony, and it is the first place where slavery was, which made it stick around there. However, the Quakers and Mennonites, those are religious people that came from England, they settled in the New England colonies. They settled farther up north. And they abhorred slavery. They hated slavery. They followed the Bible, and the Bible actually talked about how all people have souls, all people were created by God in His own image. They really focused on that, and they thought it was wrong for people to own other people, even though that happened in the Old Testament. There are some things that the Quakers and the Mennonites pointed at in the New Testament, or words by Jesus that suggested that is not a way to create, or not a way to treat your neighbors. So they were against it. And what you see over time is you see the North, which is settled by Quakers and Mennonites, becoming free states, and the South, where Virginia is, and farther south, become slave states. In 1775, Benjamin Franklin, he is the co-founder of the first anti-slavery movement in the entire world. Remember, Ben Franklin is an absolute superstar. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. Some people hate him, but he is kind of like Dolly Parton in kindness, and any sort of like major superstar you can think of. Dolly Parton and Shaun White mixed together. That sounds really weird. I think I've done this before with Ben Franklin and compared him with somebody else, but I'm not going to do it this time. Anyways, he was the most famous person in the world, and what he said, people listened to. And so he starts this first anti-slavery movement. Europeans love him. They embrace the philosophy much more than the United States. And consequently, that means because of that, all European countries, they abolished slavery by 1818. They abolished slavery an entire generation before slavery is abolished completely in the United States. 2 more generations of slaves will actually exist before they are emancipated, and emancipated means freed. Also, any of these places that have underlined words, please make sure that you underline them yourself, or better yet, highlight them so that you can refer to them quickly. That's very important stuff there. All right. Next, Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin. And the cotton gin, this was something that he thought it was. Gin is just short for engine because it was a complicated machine, and a complicated machine back then would have just been called an engine. Doesn't necessarily have to drive a car. It's just something that's complicated, and it was pretty complicated. It had lots of teeth around a drum, and as you spun the drum, the teeth would spin through the drum, and the teeth would grab cotton off of cotton stems and separate it from the tip of it. The place where the cotton touches the stems itself is very, very sticky, kind of like sap or tar, and so it made it so that you had less people getting their hands sticky and having to wash their hands after doing it for a while. So it was a way to make cotton growing and cotton farming not as reliant on slaves picking out there in the fields. And that's what his idea was. But here's where we get to an interesting thing, which is counterintuition, something that's counterintuitive. So he expected that this would happen this way, and that's what people expected. But unfortunately, it backfired because now that the cotton gin could separate cotton from the stem 10 times faster than slaves could, the South didn't want to get rid of their slaves. They just decided they would expand their fields. And instead of having amount of slaves in there picking apart cotton, they would expand their fields and put those slaves into the fields. So actually, it didn't really help. It kind of made things worse by forcing more slaves in the fields, which means that now that you have more fields and you have more cotton coming in, you get richer, which means then you have money to buy more fields to make more cotton to get richer. But who do you need to operate those fields? Well, the South thought they needed more slaves, so they'd get more slaves. So there was this cycle, there was this vicious circle of expand your fields to make more cotton and more money. You get more money, you're going to need to expand your fields to make more cotton and make more money. And you can keep doing that. Now, in order for that all to work, you have to have more workers, more slaves out there in the field. So it didn't really help. What Eli Whitney did actually is he extended the life of slavery by inventing the cotton gin. He didn't mean to, but that's what happened. And you'll get to see what a cotton gin is later. In 1828, jump Jim Crow. Oh my gosh, this is so terrible. This is so embarrassing. And when I say terrible, I really, really mean terrible. It's a song and dance that was done in blackface by a white comedian who named himself T.D. Daddy Rice. And he is well known back then of making fun of a black disabled slave who they said was Jim Crow. And the reason they that he made fun of him, called him Jim Crow, is because he had either been kicked by a horse or somehow broken in the back and in the legs, so that when he walked, he kind of made a stumbling sort of walk that people would tease him that he walked like a crow or like a raven, hopping around and stuff. But he made the song that became so entertaining that if you were a time traveler and traveled back in time, you would see that this was a national sensation. It was so popular that it was taught to children in schools. So all children growing up in schools not only knew the song, but they'd also sort of make a sort of comical dance to it. So if you traveled back in time and found whoever teaches music back then, you would see that they would be teaching their kids to sing this extremely racist song and make fun of how disabled people, well, that disabled person in general, would walk, and people would laugh at them. Oh, terrible. Seriously, it really is. And that's the middle school version of it. I'm not giving you the high school or college version of it. You'll have to discover that on your own, or you'll have to wait till then to find out how much worse it really gets. But we're going to continue on past jump Jim Crow. In 1850, Fugitive Recovery Law. That was a law that compelled all citizens in the United States by the Supreme Court to recover fugitive slaves. That means that slaves that were escaping from slavery and running to the north to live in the north, or running even farther north to go up and live in Canada, because at this time Canada is owned by Britain, and Britain got rid of slavery in 1818. So if people were up there, they weren't slaves anymore. They weren't property. And as you guys probably know, a lot of that was done by Harriet Tubman. A lot of the people that escaped, they were helped by Harriet Tubman, who's known as the conductor of the Underground Railroad. And the Underground Railroad, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that plenty of times, but you don't necessarily, maybe it's a little bit confusing because Underground Railroad has absolutely nothing to do with a railroad. It has nothing to do with going underground. It just means that underground means like secret, and railroad means route or routes. So it's just secret routes with secret waypoints, safe houses along the way where slaves who escaped could go to and work their way up north. And this railroad was very dynamic in that it moved around. Once people started to realize that the railroad was here in this part, or this was a safe house, they would change it and they would move it around. So it was very dynamic, moved quite a bit, and existed for a very long time. Remember Harriet Tubman? She was a slave. She went to the north and became free. And then she decided that, forget this, I'm going back down to the south and helping other people get free by helping them escape. So that's what she did with her life. Very commendable. And if she was caught, she would have been killed. But that's what she's decided to do with her life. All right, another sad thing, 1857, the Dred Scott case. That declares blacks, whether they're free or slaves, they have no citizen rights and are not protected under the Constitution. So if people want to, whatever they want to do to them, like anything that you would do to a pet or an inanimate object, the Supreme Court said, yeah, you could do that. They're not mentioned as black people. There's nothing in the Constitution itself that says that black people have these rights. That's how the Supreme Court ruled on it. That's what they interpreted it. And so that was a real blow to abolitionists and to slaves that escaped up north, because the Supreme Court didn't back them. Said, nope, you're black. You don't have any rights. You don't have any human rights. You don't have any citizenship rights. All right. And finally, 1861. When I say finally, that means that the next one after this, oh, well, I guess not finally. We got two more left. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln is a Republican abolitionist. He is elected president in 1860, which leads to the southern states seceding. That's an important word, to secede. That means to break away from. And they start the Civil War between the free states and the slave states. Abraham Lincoln didn't start the Civil War. As a matter of fact, they had already seceded before Abraham Lincoln even became president. He was only voted in as president. So they had already started, the South had already started seceding from the Union from when I say the Union, I mean the United States, before Abraham Lincoln even stepped into office. So it started in Charleston, South Carolina. And then after that, every other state decided to secede as well. So that by the time that President Abraham Lincoln went into office, there was already a large group of states in the South that decided they were not part of America, the United States, anymore. Now, there are many factors living to the Civil War, many factors. But all those factors point back to one main factor, which is slavery. So that's one main factor it all points to. My generation, your parents' generation, in our textbooks that we used, the textbooks were actually written in the South, and people in the South did not want to recognize that slavery was that big of a deal. So a lot of people from my generation thought that the main cause of the Civil War, or a main cause of the Civil War, was state rights. that is completely wrong. But I bet if you ask your parents, they might say, yeah. They might say, yeah, state rights was pretty important because they learned that from a textbook in school when we were growing up. And I'll tell you that the country, even back then, was considerably more racist than it is today, especially in the South. So, um, the Civil War, it's about slavery. It really is. Now, Abraham Lincoln didn't want to get rid of slaves right away. So he tried to hold it together, but the South was doing so well in the Civil War that he finally said, I needed something for these people to fight for. So I'm going to go ahead and just decide, let's go ahead and make this about slavery out in the open. I know that what you guys are trying to do is you're trying to break away from the Union because you're afraid that I or the North are going to outvote you for rights of black people, and you want to still be able to own black people. You see them as property. People in the North see them as human beings, and it does not. It doesn't. I got a phone call. Can you believe that? Where's the deny? I'm gonna let it ring. Whatever. All right. I thought I muted it. All right. Let's get through the slide and say we're done. All right, 1863, Emancipation Proclamation. That means emancipation means free, proclamation means to proclaim. Abraham Lincoln proclaimed that the Confederate States of America, that in the Confederate States of America, all slaves were free. Now, he made sure that he did not say the slaves were free in the border states or the states that were still part of the United States of America that still had slavery. Only the ones that decided to be part of the South are now considered free. He made this an executive order, which means it comes straight from the president, and the Congress has no say in it. Now, the Supreme Court can always say if it was unconstitutional, but they did not say it was unconstitutional. This executive order also allowed black men to be in combat units, which is the first time where we have an entire black regiment in a combat unit called the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. Anyway, we got to the end of the first section of notes. Your job for me, what I need you to do to show that you took these notes is, I'm going to go back a couple. I need you to take a picture of the page that has 1850, 1857 notes on it. So there are more notes on there, I'm sure, but make sure that you have a picture of that page and send it to me. 1850, 1857, make sure it has a fugitive recovery law and the Dred Scott case and those notes. These others are very important. Look at this. Look at how terrible that is. That is a depiction of the two platforms. They said that this platform is for the white man, and then the other platform is for the Negro. And look at the caricatures of how they drew the Negro compared to the white man, as they say. We wouldn't use the term Negro anymore, but it was used back then. Anyway, you can see that it's really, really bad. It's yes, it's racist. I keep on trying to avoid that term, but it's just so hard to avoid that term when it's right there in front of your face. Anyway, it's pretty terrible. Yeah, we wouldn't do something like that today. Nope. So that's your job, not your job, your task, your assignment. Take a picture of the notes that you have on that page, or the notes of 1850, 1857. And then on Monday, we'll continue to Reconstruction. Bye-bye.